titled this "The Rule of Law, Do We Have It?" We commonly call those $100 up there, 1950 issue, that was the year I was born, the top one. The bottom one's 2009. But is it really $100? There's a little note up in the corner, the left-hand corner on the top and the right-hand corner on the bottom. And we're going to look at those close up here. The top one says, "This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable in lawful money at the United States Treasury or any Federal Reserve Bank." So it's telling you it's legal but not lawful. Redeemable and lawful, okay? The other one says this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. And as a matter of fact, the top one says, in the middle, "Will pay to the bearer on demand $100. Well, if you're going to be paid $100 for that, well then that really isn't $100, okay? We're talking legal, lawful, constitutional here. Our Constitution says, "Congress shall have power to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and a foreign coin." And it says, "No state shall," and it goes on to say, "make anything but gold and silver coin a legal tender in payment of debts." This is $100, worth $1,600. Up there, what I showed you is not worth $1,600 because this kept its value, whereas everything else, and I just want you to see, this is like 6 pounds of silver. Very heavy. So take a look at it, okay? And all those bills that I'm showing you are on the table there, and the sheriff's here. Okay. Just to warn you, run, Joyce. You know, something's happened. You know, the Constitution is not the supreme law of the land anymore. We say it is. Now, this man back here who came all the way up from Beckley today for this is his check. And he wrote a letter to the tax commissioner and said he wanted to be paid in lawful money. That's an honest request. He wanted to be paid in lawful money, what the Constitution says is money. But it was denied by the tax commissioner. The tax commissioner said he could not give him lawful money. As a matter of fact, when I went to buy a car one time, I went to Belington Bank and they asked for collateral, and I said, "Can I give you gold?" And they said, "No, there's 2 things we cannot take. It's collateral, gold or silver." Now think about it. Lawful money, a bank can't take. It's illegal to have lawful money in a bank, to take it. Some of you may remember silver certificates. This is 1935. This is 1934. Interesting how it changed. Okay, it was Roosevelt that added the rather occultic symbols, or at least the occultic symbol on the left there. And the $5 bill on the top, this is very interesting. 1963, it only came out in 63. It was issued by Kennedy. Notice on the top it says United States note. This says Federal Reserve note. Of course, when we say a bill, what's a bill? That's something you owe. Notes, these are debt instruments. We do not have money, we have debt instruments. Okay, is it important? Well, our founders thought it was important, and shortly after Kennedy died, his body was probably still warm. Lyndon Baines Johnson rescinded the executive order that Kennedy had to bypass the Federal Reserve, which is a private for-profit bank. This is Gene Steinecker, and I'm Phil Hudak. We're in Charleston. It's February 24th, and we are going to serve some legislators with a petition of redress of grievance. And then in 1933, remember when they confiscated the gold? Roosevelt actually had Congress pass an act giving him dictatorial powers as long as we were in a state of emergency, and suspended the Constitution. See, here's where West Virginia comes in. Our Constitution states that it is valid during wartime and peace. In wartime and in peace. Well, the federal government said, "No, you've lost your rights because we're in a period of war. But we will grant you rights by a license, which is permission to do that, which is otherwise illegal." And basically, we want to just bring this to the public that, something's wrong with this picture. Something has to be done because my children, my grandchildren, I don't know if you have children?
You know, I don't have any children, but I have relatives, younger
Yeah.
relatives. Yes.
Well, you know, they really don't have a future if we don't have the rule of law.
Roosevelt did this. Roosevelt did this.
Roosevelt did it, yeah.
This is 1933, what was posted in post offices. You had to turn in your gold on or before May 1st, or you got $10,000 fine or 10 years imprisonment. Now, I can tell you in 1933, $10,000 was a lot of money. Okay? How did this happen? Because we were in a state of emergency. It was called the War Powers Act of 1933, when our Constitution, federal and state, was suspended. And here's what's interesting. Here's what Roosevelt said. Here's his proclamation. Now, therefore, I, Franklin D. Roosevelt, President of the United States, in view of such continuing national emergency, in virtue of the authority vested in me by a congressional law that was written by the Federal Reserve, they actually wrote the law for it, and notice the last line, continued in full force and effect until further proclamation by the President. It's never been rescinded, folks. We're still in a state of emergency. War on poverty, war on crime, war on terrorism, war on drugs. They can do anything they want. Obama can do anything he wants. He is not bound by the Constitution. Hasn't been since 1933. And this is 1973, what a senator, Congressman Beck said. The vast powers taken, this is 73, this is 40 years afterwards. He said the vast powers taken together confer enough authority to rule the country without reference to normal constitutional processes. Under the powers delegated by these statutes, the President may seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, communication, regulate operation of private enterprise. How about GNC? Restrict travel, and it will throw away control the lives of all Americans, and this situation has continued uninterrupted since March 9, 1933. So the majority of people in the United States have lived their lives, entire lives, under a state of emergency. Here's what our Constitution says at the bottom. It says, the provisions of the Constitution of the United States and of this state are operative alike in a period of war as in time of peace, and any departure therefrom or violation thereof under the plea of necessity or any other plea is subversive of good government and tends to anarchy and despotism. We're moving into anarchy and despotism, I'm afraid to say. This is in this room. You talked about the rule of law and federal intrusion, and this involves both. And that is, and I'm going to read from the West Virginia Constitution.
Sure.
No charter of a corporation shall be granted any church. Now, the reason for that is so a corporation is a creation of the state, and a corporation is controlled by the state to some extent. And how can we have a moral society? You know, we have the drug problems and a lot of things that have to do with morals and a moral meltdown that we're seeing in our country. And yet the churches in West Virginia, by the Constitution, are actually supposed to be free of the federal government, the IRS, you know, this overreaching federal intrusion that we see, you know. And my question is do we have a constitutional crisis?
Well, I take every one of your comments very seriously, and I was able to look a little bit at the issue you had provided to our office prior. I would say this, the state constitution always you need to breathe meaning into it. And there is a specific provision in place, Article 6, Section 47, and that's very relevant. So we're just beginning to look at some of that case law, that issue that you brought to our attention. I can tell you that I take very seriously the First Amendment to the Constitution. And as many of you may know, we have weighed in on issues pertaining to religious freedom.
Okay, for 2 years, we've been waiting for an answer from Mr. Morrissey, who offered us an answer. He did to Gene Stonecker while we were down there. Pastor Mike House went with us from Randolph County. Right there is the law. It says there, no charter of incorporation shall be granted to churches. And I can tell you this, churches are scared to death of the IRS because the government now, you know, you've got to do what is politically correct, okay? So basically, I took this to the churches, the DVD set that I've given you commissioners. It's a tremendous video. Charlie Daniels narrates part of it. And I'm telling you, we're in trouble, folks, because the churches are afraid of the government. You can't have muzzled churches in a moral society. It isn't going to happen. So the Constitution Party met. I proposed a resolution that we get back to the rule of law. In Pittsburgh, the National Constitution Party, they passed a resolution. Here's what they said. Be it resolved by the Constitution Party National Committee that we publicly demand the people's representatives in all three branches of West Virginia government acknowledge that a constitutional crisis exists and to immediately begin to rectify what is currently a clear and present danger to the liberty and well-being of its people. And then it goes further on, all states should get involved in this battle for the rule of law, for our Constitution.
And everyone has to follow the law. No one is above the law.
But we know that the administration's track record on the rule of law is very poor.
So I want to leave you with this. Article 1, Section 2 of the West Virginia Constitution. Internal government and police. Listen to this. The government of the United States is a government of enumerated powers, and all powers not delegated to it nor inhibited to the states are reserved to the states or to the people thereof. Among the powers so reserved to the states is the exclusive regulation of our own internal government and police, and it is the high and solemn duty of the several departments of government created by this Constitution to guard and protect the people of this state from all encroachments upon the rights so reserved. We see the government running over the states with illegal immigration and everything else, and I bring it to you folks because you took an oath to the Constitution. You are our representatives. I want you to contact Mr. Morrissey. I want you to contact the governor and the legislature and say, we have a constitutional crisis. And you've been addressed, you know this, what are you going to do about it? You know, I took an oath to the state and federal constitution in 1974 with my first teaching license. I didn't bring it here, but, you know, I take it seriously. And I'm handing the ball to you. But it's all our jobs, everybody here. Not just, you know, government is us, not just them. They're just our representatives, and I want to thank you.